Hi, I'm Alex Gosse, owner of Magically Resin, working in collaboration with Shop Resin Molds to bring y'all so many great ideas for how to use their beautiful molds. And today, I'm going to show you how I made this piece. And the more important part of this was, I made this from a coaster that I made a while back that I was just trying different techniques on. And what I want to share is how easy it is to take an old coaster or old pieces of resin and add them into new pieces to make something beautiful like this one. I start off by dusting this very clean silicone mold. That's super important if you're going to dust with glitter or with mica, because it just won't stick if there's any oil or anything already on the mold. So I like to start with a very clean washed mold, and I also like to put a little bit of alcohol in it and make sure that it is just very pristine before I get started. I'm dusting with two different colors of glitter that I got from my local Michaels, and every glitter I've found so far works for this technique. The finer the glitter, the better adherence that you get. But chunky glitter gives a really interesting effect too because it's patchy, so you can see through it, which it really just, the sky's the limit in what you consider interesting. And playing with the mold is just fun. I love dusting with glitter, and this was an experiment and it turned out to be such a beautiful outcome. So I used an iridescent pearl that's transparent when it's down on a mold like this. It could also be, you'll see that I paint on later because I decided I really wanted it to be more prominent. It would have been beautiful like this, but I actually wanted it not to be quite so transparent. So I used a white iridescent at the top, and I used a holographic black on the bottom. You can see kind of the rainbow effect from the black on the bottom. And you'll notice that whatever color you put down first, wherever that lands, the next color is not going to stick. I wanted that. I wanted this to look like icicles, which it did. So then I mixed up some glitter with some Duraclear. I do this technique all of the time. I use the bottom of the cup. It's really easy to paint on glitter, and I like it. I like to do this technique after I've already dusted the mold, because I want to make sure that there's a layer of glitter adhering to the mold that's dry. So I could have done this first and it would have taken a lot longer for it to dry because any kind of liquid next to silicone has trouble drying. So that's why I did this the way that I did. So I loaded on the glitter Duraclear paint, and I'll have listed all of the items that I used during this tutorial down in the description. And feel free to reach out to me on my social media on Instagram or follow me on my YouTube channel. I am Magically Resin everywhere. Very easy to find, and I would be thrilled to know how this inspired you and what you're working on. So you really can't go wrong with this technique. It's so fun and probably could be done with school glue and a wide variety of other things, but since I have Duraclear and I know that that works, I use that product. So I absolutely love painting up a mold as long as I've dusted it in advance. And then I'm kind of just creating the icicles. And this will take some time to dry, so I know that I'm going to have to give this like 24 hours before I can top this with resin. So I like to really experiment with coasters. I find these coasters from Shop Resin Molds to be so amazing. And I have a wide variety of them, so you'll see me doing a lot of this type of tutorial. And I just think these are so fun to test out new techniques, and it's not a huge investment in resin because really the glitter and the Duraclear are cheap. So there's no harm done. And I had never done this quite this way before, so I thought it would be fun to play with this, and I film everything that I do on the off chance that it turns out really cool. And it turned out in this case that I also wanted to use this coaster in a larger mold because it turned out so amazing, but it felt like it needed to be the centerpiece of something. This has now sat for well over 24 hours. The thicker that you do the Duraclear paint, in air quotes, the longer that it's going to take to dry, so I just gave it plenty of time. And you want to make sure it is absolutely dry before you put on the resin, or you'll have a problem when you go to demold that it will separate and can be a mess. So I have this technique that I've been playing with that I added to the top that is mixing white pinata alcohol ink with just a little bit of silicone oil and then pulling it through very soft resin so it flows very easily. And I'm just having a blast with this technique. It's great for marbleizing things. It makes fantastic ocean scene. I do a bunch of this on my YouTube, and I will be doing it on this channel as well because I absolutely love this technique and it's so easy to do. So this is a little bit later on, and obviously the coaster has completely cured, and it just was such an interesting piece and would have made a great coaster, except, well, I don't really need any more coasters and I didn't want to make a set of these. So, and it moved past it being Christmas. I'd made it as a Christmas thing. So now I'm moving into something different, and I thought, wouldn't this be cool as like a centerpiece with something with a mandala or something on top, because it had a very Zen feel to it. So I felt like it was calling for the juxtaposition of a black background, but I didn't want the black background to be just flat and lifeless. So this kind of evolved as I was moving forward. You can see my head reflecting in the black. That's funny. As I'm looking at it to make sure that there's no hairs in it or bubbles or anything like that. So that's very unexpected, and first time I've seen that happen. Anyway, so this is just resin with black mica and black acrylic paint in it, and that makes a perfect base. I gave this resin a little bit of time to set up. I didn't want it to move around too much when I put in the alcohol ink droplets. I actually wanted to make a polka dotted depth effect with the dots that I was using. So I let the resin cure up to some degree so that the alcohol would stay as a dot when I put it in. And I thought it was a cool effect. Again, just trying something new, but I liked the way it worked. Giving that enough time to cure so that I was sure that it wouldn't be moved by this top coat, I went ahead and poured a top coat because I still had plenty of room in the mold for more interesting something. And I thought this would be so beautiful with quartz crystals added to it to really bring home the Zen feeling that I was looking for. So as an artist, I'm decorating my yoga studio right now, and everything that I'm doing is leaning towards the Zen feeling of things. And I love these little quartz crystal chips. I add them to almost everything. I like the way that they kind of disappear in the resin when you cover it, and I love the depth that they offer. Basically anything underneath resin that gives the feeling that the resin is like 2 feet deep and you can see the reflective and all the facets. I think that's incredible, and that's always been something that I lean into. So I really enjoy that with a mold like this with just a very little bit of depth. You don't need a lot of resin to get a lot of visual depth, and I think this piece turned out like some of the most visual depth I've ever gotten, and I just love that. I think it's so fun. So I probably am going to use this as a clock. After I got done making it, I felt like it just called to be a clock. So I might make that as a clock for my studio, or somebody might buy it. I sell all of my pieces on my Etsy, and the last couple of pieces that I've made for tutorials have sold. So if you're interested in any of my art, I also make inlays for resin because I really want to make this easier for every resin artist, regardless of any skill level, to start out with a good mold and an inlay and some good resin and make something incredible. And that was really the idea of this tutorial as well. You can play with a coaster, and even if you don't use the coaster, at some point you can add it to a larger piece of art, and that is so interesting and adds so much value, and you already have it. So I've given this a few more hours so that everything will set up and not move around when I add the very top coat. I actually do add a dome coat in a little while. I don't think I do that on camera because I decide that I want to add the mandala. And this was perfect. It was beautiful right out of the mold, but because I wanted the mandala added to it, I went ahead and did a dome coat on top of the mandala to seal everything in. The mandala is something that I make myself, and I sell those in my Etsy shop as well. So reach out to me if you're interested in one of these types of things. Frequently, when I make something I'm going to use, I just make a couple extras and throw it up in my shop. So it's very random what's actually in my shop at any given time. But if it's something I've already made, it's pretty easy to make another one. So this is the end result, and I just am so ecstatic. The camera does not even do justice to how much depth and color shift here. The crystals are beautiful. This turned out so amazing, and this was all just born of an idea of a pretty coaster and throw some stuff around it to make some depth. So use your imagination with these molds and let them inspire you to create new things. And anything that you make, it's not a waste. Put it in something else, use it again. It is so easy to use resin in other resin. I thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that something I did inspired you. Please feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media. Please feel free to leave anything in the comments that you might want to see or something you might like us to try. I will be doing tutorials for shop resin molds weekly, and I'm happy to try your ideas.